Okay, let's get started. So again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name's Stephen Morgan, and I'm very excited to be moderator for today's webinar. I'm joined today by Jeff Edwards, CIO and Associate Provost at Xavier University. And today we will explore how COVID-19 has accelerated the need for digital transformation within higher education. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. First of all, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. As usual today, the webinar is being recorded and we'll send all attendees a link to the recording and slides in the next couple of days. Jeff's going to share his insights with us today. We're incredibly grateful for that, on how Xavier University has adapted to COVID, and he'll be taking questions for about 10 minutes towards the end of the presentation. Please submit any questions you might have through the Q&A tab on your Zoom browser so that we can get them answered at the end. Okay, COVID-19 has simultaneously affected us all globally to varying degrees as our personal and professional lives have been disrupted. So business as usual right now is simply not an option, and particularly across higher education. We've seen universities rush to push forward years of needed digital transformation into a matter of months to adapt to students' needs online. But even before the pandemic hit, colleges and universities were struggling to recover from some losses totaling up to $9 billion a year in government funding, with inevitable consequences such as being forced to cut classes and increase program prices in some cases. Coupled with that, more and more students are already choosing to study online, with recent surveys showing that the majority of students, 76% in fact, prefer the study-life balance that online learning brings. This, now paired with the current climate, means we found universities we've been servicing are ready to invest their efforts in innovative technology to enable a better overall student experience that's blending their real world and digital interactions into one seamless journey. At Squiz, we've been busy delivering our Edify solution to help connect campuses through a modern platform for a seamless student experience, whether on campus, at home, or abroad. We found universities are able to more effectively reach students with critical information through targeted notifications and real-time communication. Over these past few months alone, we've been working with universities where only a quarter of their communication has been reaching students with important COVID updates. Being able to not only reach students, but empower them to easily find the resources they need to succeed with a single modern platform has helped them keep students engaged. With that in mind, I'm keen to hear Jeff's thoughts on the work he's been doing at Xavier University as its CIO to accelerate their digital transformation efforts and remain agile during COVID. Jeff is presently responsible for the executive oversight of all information technology functions and the university library. Prior to his role at Xavier, he was a senior director of product development at Genzabar, an administrative software product for higher education, and was also the previous vice president and chief information officer at Spring Arbor University. Once again, welcome, Jeff. We're really excited to have you join us today.
Thank you, Steve.
To kick off today's discussion, let's start by focusing on how to meet modern student expectations through agility and adaptable technology. We'd like to hear from you throughout the presentation. We've got some polling questions direct to the audience. This is the first one, a live polling question that you'll see in your Zoom browser shortly. It is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how impactful has COVID-19 been in accelerating your university's digital transformation strategy? 1 being highly ineffective and 5 being highly effective. I'll just give you a couple of moments to answer that. Thank you. We can see from the responses coming through already, it's been very impactful in your digital transformation strategy. We'll share the results with the slides later in the week. We're seeing digital investment accelerate very rapidly as a result of enforced lockdowns. Whilst prior to COVID, digital transformation was seen as a multi-year investment, it's been compressed into a matter of months. So Jeff, At Xavier, and in your role, how many years of transformation have you squeezed into the past few months?
Well, thank you, Steve. You said it right, that transformation really is slow, typically at higher education. Transformation that normally would take years to accomplish is suddenly happening in days. An example is when we realized we needed a test monitoring solution for our remote students taking exams at Xavier. We met the same day. What I would have normally done is recruit a requirement team, get it on the project priority list, hold a kickoff meeting, get requirements, do a market survey. Well, in one day we were meeting, the next day we made the decision. And that was really fascinating for me. No committees, no RP, we just did it. It was the fastest decision that I've ever seen made in higher education, even at Xavier. But given our circumstances, people are motivated to see change happen. And we have the strongest reason for that change today. Without classes starting, without technology, classes would not be able to start. Everybody was affected. So as a CIO, it's kind of a dream come true. As they say, you never want to waste a good crisis when it happens. So going remote wasn't just about technology. One of the things that we learned is it's about people. And when change happens, stress happens, uncertainty happens, and we had all of those with the coronavirus. And everybody was under a tremendous amount of stress. So even though change happens quickly, it really requires some finessing, some personal touch that we did at Xavier. We very quickly, again in days, our goal was to personalize the situation by calling every one of our undergraduates, all 4,500 of them in 6 days. We organized a team just by a call out, got 143 faculty and staff. It was actually easy to recruit them because we're a Catholic Jesuit institution that has one of our priorities is what we call cura personalis, or the care of the whole person. And everybody wanted to participate. So we called the students to tell them the change in the schedule, our plan to go remote. The families were extremely appreciative of that personal touch. So even with change, personal touch is really, really important. The faculty were amazing too. What would have taken years happened in days. We were on spring break. Faculty, while they were on spring break, they had a very high adoption rate of technology. We taught them how to teach with remote technology because high standard was face-to-face. And IT was ready, the technology was available, and made rapid fire decisions about what training and what technology needed to be used. Everybody worked very long hours. My team, the faculty, the staff, everyone, but we felt very successful as we were able to launch on time just 2 weeks later. So what would have taken years, we did in 2 weeks. It's a learning process for everybody, including IT, and we were amazed at the speed of change that took place. I was even doing some of the training myself in webinars, which was pretty unheard of, but it worked. We made it happen. So faculty who never taught in Zoom before were ready to go. They used document cameras, iPads, did their own video editing, launched courses in Canvas, and found and assigned electronic books for courses. We've engaged an outside company to help us develop a virtual nursing lab. And that was a first for Xavier University to do something like that. Some of the staff who had never worked remote in their entire career, because we have a high value of being on campus at Xavier, they were suddenly scheduling Zoom meetings integrated with Outlook. We held webinars on the technology. We scheduled meetings, remote communication using Cisco Jabber and Microsoft tools such as Teams. The exciting part was the visibility that IT received during this time. No longer were we seen as just keeping the lights on, but we were seen as essential, a critical part of everyone's job. The president himself and many of the vice presidents personally thanked me and my team for all the hard work that we had done. So just to let you know that it's not over. Fall's coming. Xavier has a plan for us to come back to campus. And so we're in the process right now of implementing hybrid classroom technology, something that we never would have done without this COVID situation. We hired Radiant Technology to help us assemble and install Zoom room kits. So we're able to now, in the classroom, teach students as well as students remotely at the same time. With a one-touch solution, it makes it very simple for faculty to be able to use that, to be able, students remotely to see the whiteboard and the instructors to be able to see the remote students. So although we changed quickly, it still was strategic. And I just want to emphasize that, because sometimes when you have an opportunity and you take it, you've leveraged technology that never was used very much before, and it allows our students to be more effectively educated today. So the decisions were quick. We made, we didn't jump over the important step of collaboration, though. I just want to emphasize that. We included faculty in every major step as we went forward. The faculty committee chair was literally on speed dial with me, so I had a lot of opportunity to connect with him.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned cura personalis. I think that's a wonderful saying, and wonderful, the meaning. If you look up, if you Google the meaning of it, what it stands for is great. Care of the whole person, care of the individual. And I know you also haven't had many remote students at Xavier before. But you just mentioned you're doing sort of a hybrid learning environment with your STEM classes. Do you see hybrid learning as part of the foreseeable future? Are you investing more in that then across the board?
I think we will. One of the areas that the nursing department, or the college, it's a nursing college now, shared with me was, we have a tremendous opportunity with distance learning for nursing students. There's a lot of rural areas, even in Ohio, that have a great need to train more nurses. And so we believe this technology will advance that in a great way. Adult learning, absolutely. I came from a college or university, Spring Arbor University, that had 17 different sites around the state of Michigan, where we had launched situations where students, so whoever's working locally could come into an office and still get educated from a college or a university that was quite a ways away. So those kinds of opportunities, I think, are in our future. We just haven't realized them in the past.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, you've only got to look at the stock market lately to see that any organization with self-service technology that's scalable and enables anything remote is really a clear differentiator for those that have it, and those organizations have taken off. But many universities we work with haven't quite got to the right level of usability and consumer-like functionality that students expect nowadays, especially when they're largely off-site. And that's been an issue. So the question is, have you received any feedback in your digital experience now that students have had to rely on it almost exclusively, I guess, over the past few months? And did it meet student expectations in the age of the tech giants?
Yes, we actually have received very positive feedback. The adoption of our remote learning tools was a high adoption by faculty as well as staff. We even heard a few situations where the students were helping the faculty learn the technology. Obviously, they're digital natives, and so they have the skills, and they also have the expectations that are fairly high for us to continue. But technology is something that you can continually improve on. I sit on a CIO board of $2 billion companies and above in Cincinnati. And as I hear the technologies that they're engaging in their large corporations, I'm thinking, we are so far behind, what the capability is. Well, guess what? Students are familiar with that, and they have expectations. So it really is a need for us to continue to move forward with using AI or using apps and things like that in the future. But in this situation, technology wasn't the only barrier for students, which is interesting. It's just not, can they adapt technology? The question was, what are the barriers? Well, there was economic challenges for some of our students. Some students didn't have easy access to computers or the internet or a webcam. They might only have one computer in their household, where both, all the parents, the siblings, everybody required one, but there was only one computer, so they couldn't get their work done. We created an easy way for students to let someone know if they were unable to get their work done and needed a computer, or needed a webcam, or needed help with the internet. We created a loaner program that shipped computers to their homes and with a return shipping label to allow those students to be able to finish the end of the term. It kept some of these students engaged, and it kept them in their classroom throughout the spring semester. So the real question is, how is technology an enabler of belonging? And we see it as essential, which is really interesting. I don't think a few years ago we would see technology so essential because it's the way we do our work. It really becomes the enabler of students and faculty and staff to be able to engage with each other. Students come to campus to develop lifelong relationships. They find friends, they date, they get married, they build lifelong relationships with the university, including its faculty and staff. And belonging occurs when students sense this feel of accepted, valued, included, and encouraged by others, whether it comes from their instructors or their peers. That phone call that I mentioned in the beginning to help students navigate getting their stuff out of the residence halls, understand the new schedule, and figure out the plan for the rest of the term, it was critical to belonging. As I said, the parents and the students were grateful for that personal touch, for them to feel like they were valued enough that we cared to let them know what was happening and how they could navigate. The faculty reached out to students. They were commissioned to reach out to students, didn't show up for class, create community with the students. There was a computer showing up in the mail when the student didn't have one. All of those things were amazing ways in which the students began to feel accepted, valued, included, and encouraged. So even in this COVID crisis, there's things that universities can do to engage these families. They were grateful. They showed a great sense of commitment and involvement because of the personal touch. You could see that their commitment level to finish the term was much higher because of our reaching out to them. It was a pleasure also to see my team be a major part of helping these students and faculty this spring and even in the summer. They've done a lot, and it's been fun to see them see the rewards for them as well.
That's brilliant. I'm asking this question on behalf of a couple of attendees because I know that they've had some issues with this actually. How did you enable the requests for loaner laptops and internet assistance and things like that, or was that done through outreach?
Interesting. We did it several different ways. What I didn't want to do was just advertise it on the web, because who knows who would have asked for a computer. So as long as the faculty or staff member did the request on behalf of the student, we just asked no questions and sent it to them. Now, they did have to be a registered student at Xavier. We were suspicious of one person who asked for a computer, like, are they really registered? But as long as they were registered and somebody else vouched for their need, we didn't make them fill out any paperwork. We just had to ask us at xavier.edu, send us an email, and we'll ship you a computer. We made it that simple.
Great, that's brilliant. Well, thanks, Jeff. We've got some great questions on that topic, but I'll save those for the end of the Q&A at the end.
Okay.
The other ones. Yeah, so we'll move on to our second topic now, which is why real-time and personalized communication are essential for increasing student engagement. And I just want to take another moment to poll the audience again with another question, which is, what are your university's greatest existing challenges? Ineffective student communication, low student retention, slow digital transformation, decreased revenue channels, or low student engagement? This is a you can answer multiple with multiple answers on this one. So let's give you a few seconds to do that. Okay, thank you. Some great answers coming through there. Again, we'll collate these and send them out with the slide deck later tomorrow or the next day. So we at Squiz, we're working with some schools at the moment who found that their real-time comms, like notifications and SMS, actually let them down a bit during COVID. They couldn't reach the entire student population. Maybe they didn't have as many outreach calls going on as you did, Jeff, because their apps or portal or both weren't being widely used by the student population. So the question, how do you think universities can cut through the noise that students receive from so many different sources while addressing student needs to ensure better engagement?
So a couple of years ago, we began some focus groups with students with that very question in mind. And we began to look at what do they want, what do they expect, and what do they need. And the four things that I would summarize that we found that were really critical for them was that we wanted to make sure that they wanted to make sure that they had really good communication. And you can imagine a blast email out to all students that students don't even read their email. So the question is how do we communicate in a way that's personal, targeted, and useful to help them to connect with faculty and peers in their group of friends with common interest. So they were interested in making friends in long-term relationships. How do we help them speed up those connections? And we've investigated different ways, but we do know that that's a really important aspect of what they're looking for. They want to know what's going on. You know, that sense of belonging really comes from being in the moment and saying, what's happening on Saturday night? What's happening on Friday night? What's the things that I might be wanting to do that I'm not doing today? What groups are out there that I may want to join or have special interests that I might want to find out more about? So in available times, you know, to be measured with faculty. So again, communication, they want to understand the calendaring, you know, what's out there. They also want to have convenience, and that convenience of support and service that they need when they need it. It might be that they forgot their password. I need to get my class assignment done. What is it? What was my grade? I'm concerned about my safety. How do I get a campus escort across campus? I want to use technology to pay my bills, get my meals, to access my room and dorms securely. All of those things are convenience. In other words, having everything I need in my pocket. I don't have to keep track of where my all card is. Those kinds of things really mean a lot to students. The consumer market has seen the advancement of technology to help them shop and connect and save time. We need to be faster in higher education adopting these same technologies. And so for example, how long do I need to wait in line before the washing machine is available? I don't want to go down there until there's a free one. How do I order my coffee and just pick it up rather than wait in line? That's been happening at Starbucks for a very long time. Does it happen on your campus? How long is the line? Is there available parking spaces in the lot closest to my dorm? Students want convenience with all the convenience of an app right there on their phone. They want something that's customizable, so they can make it their own. They just want to be able to get their work done. So the real question is there something that we're trying to push and ask them to use that's not very helpful? Well, they're just going to delete it. But if it's really helpful for them, they'll engage with it. And what I discovered last year was if you get the right killer app and everybody's downloaded on their phone, guess what? Now you have a way to communicate with every student on campus. And that's not something that comes just naturally. It comes by creating value. And that's really what we need to be about, is how do we help create value for students that they want to be able to do this? So some of the things that I've been thinking about is just how do you deliver this in a fast way to students? And one of the things I learned just recently in the real world is you have to understand what the need is before you begin. We had a situation where we needed to communicate to all students in the fall what the symptom tracking for COVID, and we needed to know within a day how we're going to do that. Well, we've been thinking about it for a while, but we didn't have to make a decision until yesterday. And I just got a couple people together that says, let's test it and try it. And we found a solution immediately. And so those kinds of tools that are out there, we just haven't leveraged them, but we don't even know how to use them until we know what the need is. The other thing I've learned in my stay at Xavier, and I purposed when I came, is that if you see an opportunity, take it, move quickly. You'll soon know if the idea is a good idea or if it's not a good idea. If you think you need a CRM, like I did when I first came to Xavier, say it and see if it gets traction. It got traction at Xavier, and we're implementing a CRM for our alumni. It's really important to try it. We brought in an app that we thought was sold as kind of the killer app that was going to help all students communicate. So we said, okay, let's try it. So we put it out there. Nobody used it. And so we immediately knew that was, it spoke for itself. We just need to move on. Also allow for innovation and change. Sometimes we're threatened by innovation change ourselves, and maybe the best idea comes from a different department. It doesn't have to come from IT. Just be open to those things and be able to make decisions faster than ever. What takes months to decide or years in the past needs to be done in days. Change does come hard. So one of the things that I always make sure is that you have a real strong business reason for change. In other words, the why. You know, be able to answer what are the benefits if we do this. If you want 100% adoption, you got to get a mandate from the president. But if you want to get a 90% adoption, you give some students a reason to adopt it that they can't resist. Get value early, and people will keep coming back for more. And I mentioned earlier that I have this privilege of being on the CIO Roundtable. One of the projects that I saw them, GE Aviation, take on was the ability for them to have a predictive model of when engines are going to fail and when to maintenance those engines. It's saved them millions of dollars in terms of maintenance. Another company had an ability to predict who was a good credit risk and who was not very reliably. They did it all through artificial intelligence. You know, how are we leveraging artificial intelligence on campus? It's, even if it's in small ways, to help us to be able to serve the needs of our consumers who are our students on campus. We may not be as well funded as organizations, but we have the right, if we have the right philosophy and focus, and we have the right engagement, we can begin to integrate systems that provide that information they need when they need it to excel at serving students. That is success. If we're able to take the tools that we have, integrate them, and allow people to have the right information at the right time, they'll be able to make decisions on their own and be able to accomplish their goals. That is success.
Brilliant. Yeah, I guess, yeah, unlike some firms, universities do have a lot of data to leverage in an AI context and machine learning context.
That's right.
So, yeah. I guess a slightly simpler problem though. We've seen a lot of studies mention the decreasing rate of email opens and email acknowledgement from the student bodies, and some of our customers have experienced this as well. Is that something you've noticed at Xavier, like a drop off in the effectiveness of email communication?
Oh, absolutely. Every institution that I've spoken to has had the same experience. Email is not a way that students want to communicate. And the reason I know is we do a cybersecurity campaign every fall in October. And I did an interview, focus group interview of students after we did a campaign with the students one year, and says, oh yeah, I saw that, I just deleted it. They have no interest in being able to do one more thing that helps the university stay safe. And so what we found is the way we get their attention is, you know, first of all, you either mandate something, you force them to do it, which is possible. We forced them to change their passwords so that they wouldn't be giving up their accounts. And we went down from like 200 or 300 lost accounts a year into about 25 per year. So it made a huge difference. But unless you mandate something, students really have to want it. And so you have to find ways to get them to communicate with you. So personalization is key. If message isn't personal for me, from my professor, from my friend, I'm not interested in it. And so they won't even read it. Even if it's from their professor, they may not read it. But if it's in their Canvas course and it's an assignment, they probably will. Notifications are much more effective than email messages. So just keep that in mind as you go forward. If you want to connect with students and you need to get an important message out, it needs to be through an app, not through an email.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we've got some more questions through the second period of our presentation, which I'll save for a bit later. But let's extend the discussion now to talk through how it's helped you reimagine the student experience as a seamless, blended, real-world and digital one. And we've got our final poll for the audience today, which is, how would you rank your existing student portal or platform in effectively engaging students on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 being highly ineffective and 5 being very effective. That's great. Thank you very much for the feedback there. Jeff, you might be happy to hear this, but we've seen the role of CIO become more and more prominent across higher education. There have also been studies like McKinsey's that came out recently, citing that 70% of successful digital transformation project teams referred to leaders familiar with digital technologies as the key contributing factor to their success. So in terms of your role and at Xavier and Xavier itself, how do you see technology enabling a more seamless student experience between on-campus and online? The hybrid
It's a good question. I've been thinking about how what we're doing today is going to impact the future, as you asked earlier. And I believe that we have opened up a whole new world for faculty. I think we are opening up a new world for students as well, as we all learn the same applications. And I realize there's a lot of applications out there you can choose from, but the key is that we all have the same platform. We begin to communicate in ways that we've never done before. So for example, faculty are learning how to do asynchronous learning as well as synchronous learning. Being able to teach them both of those technologies or those pedagogies helps them to be more versatile. And so there may be times in which you have a synchronous class, but you also want to have what they call the flipped classroom and allow the instruction to happen online and the discussion to happen in person. There's a lot of those pedagogies that haven't even been explored. In fact, I was thinking about this. I was thinking this would be like an amazing opportunity for someone to do a doctoral thesis on, and what's happening today is to understand that students learn in different ways. And we may be breaking new ground in terms of making it more seamless for them. We have an MBA program that it's already been doing this. We have classes that are on premise, and we have classes that are asynchronous. And we allow students who are adult learners to be able to switch from course to course. Do they want to be on ground? Do they want to be in the cloud? They have choice. And I think students do have different types of learning, and they need to have that type of choice. It hasn't always been there. But having a synchronous class that is also taught remotely, that's a new thing that we haven't done very much of in higher education. And we're experimenting that this fall with about 100 classrooms at Xavier. And it'll be interesting to see what faculty choose. One of the things that they were asked to do, which is really fascinating, is they were actually asked to prepare 3 different ways for fall. And so they had to prepare an online course for a couple of weeks. They had to prepare what I would consider a remote class, synchronous class, and some kind of a combination of both. And because they've done that, we are probably better prepared to pivot, which is going to be helpful for Xavier, depending on what happens with the coronavirus this fall. But we do have an opportunity to see faculty becoming way more willing to participate in all of those different worlds, those options, and to see the power of pedagogy combined with technology to leverage learning. I think that experience is something that students will like. I do think that they will have preferences, but they will have choices. And because we're in this digital age, we need to have choice. That's a really important aspect for students. Without this crisis, we would still be clinging to our paper and our physical books and our classrooms. But without much notice, we had to give them up and develop a learning with digital materials, which are used both remote and online as well as in-class learning. So we have a lot of opportunities to create options for students and choice, and it's giving us an opportunity to do a lot of learning on our part to be a much more versatile university.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jeff. Now, you've already answered parts of this actually, but I've got to ask the question anyway. So as a prospective student or a returning student at Xavier, what can I expect in 2021 from the university experience?
So I would say the fall of 2020 is really up to the governor of Ohio. If he allows us to come back on campus, we will have the opportunity to experience what I would consider a remote learning on campus. I'm excited to see our new Zoom room kits in action this fall. We did quite a bit of research and a lot of effort to be able to engage faculty so that they could approve of that solution. And we thought of every possible combination that could take place this fall. And as we thought through those things, it takes a village to train everyone. As I said, faculty have been asked to prepare 3 different scenarios for fall. Students will not only have a good experience within the classroom, but we've also engaged a company called Campus Groups, and we're installing a new solution for our groups on campus for students. This is going to help enable what I would consider more of the modern age of matching, of friendships, of being able to say, what are the interests that students have, get them engaged with each other, more of a real social media kind of an impact. At the same time, that helps us as administrators to be able to provide the support that Campus Groups needs, or our groups on campus need, in order to be able to be successful. Our goal is to grow this app called Campus Groups, and it is a mobile app, to be used in a way, as I described earlier, as kind of the one app solution for Xavier. And it's going to be done through integration. It's going to take us time and over time, but we believe that's where we are headed. I do believe that we will also finish our implementation of our alumni CRM this year that we're doing in partnership with Squiz. And we're expecting to realize that dream of a modern CRM with marketing tools to grow our active alumni base. We've also realized personalization comes from marketing tools. And so for us to be able to know more about our alumni gives us opportunity then to know more about our students and be able to personalize our messaging. So as we engage in that process and raise the bar in terms of what we expect it to have an impact on all the other applications on campus as well. But I think what a student can expect this fall is a caring community at Xavier University that does care about the whole individual. And we will help them through this process to be successful, and we'll also guide them in their maturing and becoming citizens of the United States and the world.
Thanks, Jeff. That's brilliant. Thank you. Great answer. We've had some fantastic questions come through while we've been talking. So I'd like to try and get to them all today. But if we don't get to them all, we will certainly try and answer them. We'll answer them via email in a follow-up to this session. So Jeff, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump into some Q&A now. I've been asking you a few questions along the way, but this is stuff from the audience. So the first one I have for you is, it's like with a lot of campus extracurriculars being cancelled due to COVID, especially something like sports. And this is actually one I identify with because I've come to know how good a lot of the Jesuit schools are at basketball, particularly the Xavier Musketeers. Yeah. And with sports playing such a big role in student engagement at some schools, like Xavier, I imagine, how has Xavier attempted to keep students engaged who might have found that as their pathway to feel belonging at the university?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's one that we've been struggling with all summer. We've actually engaged the entire campus in 5 different focus groups around, getting ready for fall. And one of those groups that I'm a part of is the student engagement. And I think I'm actually missing the meeting right now. They're talking about these very things. I didn't think about this before, but food is a kind of a big deal with students because they not only need to eat every day, but they use it as their social opportunity. So we actually even have policy about bringing food into campus. So we begin to think about what are the things that students do that help them to engage and continue to enable those things. Now, there are some limits. We will probably have to curtail some of the overnight travel. There won't be any international trips and things like that. But on campus, we're trying the best we can to allow them to still have the events, the gatherings in a very safe way by creating rooms that have a particular setup that allow them to be socially distanced in the moment and to have good practices in keeping safe even as they bring food onto campus. In terms of sports, that's a tough one. What we have to depend on is the NCAA's decisions. And so far, their decision is to only have in-conference games and not outside conference games. No games with teams that are outside the conference. So that limits the number of games and it limits the number of events that do take place. But still, we're continuing with those events. We'll be providing opportunities for students to still have their social activities and their gatherings, but just in a much safer way this fall. So we have a whole team thinking about that. Hopefully, as we move into the fall, students will see that we're really wanting them to be able to have that college experience, even in this kind of unusual time.
Gee, thanks, Jeff. This question's from Joni Mead. How are you handling field experience courses such as student teaching?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I'm going to give you a complete answer for that, Joni. So if you want to email me, I'd be happy to find out specifically. I do know that we have engaged the hospitals in the area, and we do have students that will be practicing nursing throughout the fall, and that is the intention right now. We did have to suspend both that and the student teaching in the spring, but depending on what the public schools decide to do, we will do the same. In other words, if they hold class, we'll continue to have our students with the right protective gear to be able to participate in those situations. That's my understanding today.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. And this is at least one's anonymous, but do you anticipate that the remote and hybrid solutions will open up educational programs to students with disabilities that may not have previously felt that those programs were within their reach?
Great question. When we began this whole process, I went to our disabilities office to say, how are we going to do this? And so we found out that there's different types of transcription that happens when faculty speak. And it's really important for us to be able to meet those needs. So we engaged in the process of being able to help them with transcriptions as faculty are teaching, or students were engaging with each other. We found that Microsoft Teams is a great solution for that. Zoom provides that as well, but we felt that Microsoft Teams perhaps provided a little bit better. But in anticipation of that, we continue to provide transcription services for our students with disabilities. I think that there will be opportunities. I don't know that we've actually done any recruiting based on that, but I do think that there is going to be an ability for students who, for example, may not have been able to physically be in the place on campus. We would welcome them to participate, and we would have a way for them to do that. So I do think that's possible. I think we do need to think through how do we promote that in a way that's appropriate and also engaging.
Great, thanks, Jeff. This is another anonymous one. Has Xavier sought any technological solutions around contact tracing to help control outbreaks on campus if they occur?
That's a really interesting question. We have. Early in the process, when I knew that Google and Apple had partnered together to come up with a contact tracing infrastructure that apps could be built upon, I was very interested and engaged and thinking that's where we were head. As we got closer to the date in which that decision needed to be made, I was finding out from our campus that we weren't quite as interested in that. So I jumped on a webinar with Creighton University, and Creighton University has done a great job of this. First of all, they have developed a policy that they were asking every person on campus, whether a staff, student, or employee, to be able to commit to keeping a safe place at Creighton. They also are going to be asking them to download this app called Ivy, and it's going to allow them to be able to report daily on their symptoms. We at Xavier took a different approach, and we're not actually collecting information. We felt that that was kind of crossing the line in terms of into health questions that our faculty and staff may not be wanting to answer. But we will be notifying them that this is a real big concern and that we want them to do some self-checking. So our contact tracing is going to become manual. State of Ohio has a whole department that's built around this, and we have partnership with TriHealth, the hospital provider in the Cincinnati area that we're partnering with, that will be engaging the state health department in helping with the contact tracing. Before it even gets that far, we know where students go to class, we know where they live, we know what they do on a daily basis. We'll have all that information that we'll be able to supply to the appropriate authorities if needed, but perhaps provide some jogging of thinking for students. So although I think it's a great idea, we're getting some challenges about have we actually come up with the app that works really, really well. I'm not sure we have yet, and I do believe that there is some combination of technology and manual tracing that's going to need to take place.
Right, okay, thank you. Brilliant. Next one is from Jessica Easton Langston. We are exploring the option of a computer loaner program as well. Where did you obtain the computers for the program? Were they new purchases or existing? I knew the computer loaner would be a hot topic, Jeff, because I've been asked about that a lot recently. So,
yes. So that's a really interesting question. The purchases were actually, the computers were actually existing. We had a day loaner program where you could go to the library and check it out, and made it really easy for people to use. There had been some situations where we had already opened up some disadvantaged students that were coming to class, didn't really have a computer. Their faculty discovered it, and they personally asked me if there was a way for them to borrow a computer. And so we said, sure, we can make that happen. We have 60 computers here. We can loan one or two of them. That's not a problem. When the coronavirus hit and we went remote, we realized that that was going to be a bigger issue. And so we took those 60, 80 computers, I don't know the exact number, and said, let's, instead of making them day loaners, let's make them a semester loan. And so we check them out, allow individuals to check them out of the library and use them for the entire semester. We think that we need more this fall. With new freshmen coming in, we'll probably order a few more at that time. But when we had the crisis, we did put an order in for about 100 extra computers, and we couldn't get them. There was a federal mandate at that point that shut down all shipments of computer laptops at that time. They were confiscated, I call it confiscated, excuse me. They were reserved for the federal government. And so we were fortunate to have had computers on board at that point. Since then, we've only ordered a few extra computers. We paused our refresh program for faculty and staff this year due to the finances shortage. And so we'll probably start that back up again this next year, but at least at this point, we probably will order a few more for the loaner program. But we're not finding that people are taking advantage of it. We do find that there is a real need, and we want to meet that need as a Catholic Jesuit university at Xavier.
Great, thanks, Jeff. That's the end of the questions that we got through the Q&A today. But thank you for those answers, Jeff, on the fly. That was brilliant. This is a quick bit about what Squiz has been up to and what we're doing. We've actually, on our digital experience platform that enables about 100 universities worldwide to connect and engage with students online, we've built an out-of-the-box application called Edify, which brings all the information a student needs into one place, one easy-to-use dashboard, either mobile on the desktop, integrates with LMS, SAS, and other systems, important systems throughout the university, and allows real-time personalized notifications to stay in touch and engage with those students. If you want to hear more about that product, just please visit squiz.net/get/edify to find out more, and we'd be happy to give you a demonstration or any further information that you require. But that's the end of today's webinar. Jeff, a sincere thank you for being our guest today. It's been wonderful to have you, and you spoke very eloquently and very insightfully about all our topics. And I'd just like to say a big thanks from me, Squiz, and all of the audience that joined today.
Thank you, Steve. It's my pleasure to participate with you all today, and happy to answer any follow-on questions as well.
That's great. And we'll be sending a copy of today's webinar, a copy of the slide deck, and obviously details to contact Jeff, myself, or any of the Squiz team with further questions after this webinar, and any other questions that come up. So you can please feel free to add to the Q&A and add any more questions that you'd like answered post-event, and we'll get back to you after this. We've just had a lovely message from Sonia Wenzel, who said, "Thank you for such a great webinar." So that's good, some good feedback already, Jeff. So thank you all for attending. I'm going to give you back 10 minutes of the day, which my marketing department told me was okay, but going over was not. So I think I've stuck to the script. And thank you all for joining us. We've had a wonderful list of attendees and a wonderful webinar, and see you all soon. Thank you very much.